Summit Dodge, Tommy Saki on 95.7 The Wolf. We'll be back to Randy Corey. We'll be back to Randy Corey in just a little while, but of course we're going to continue our AUS hockey preview with the man who's been doing this a number of years and certainly has his pulse on the AUS, and that is Bruce Hallihan. And Bruce, thanks very much for agreeing to join us again.
You're welcome.
Now, of course, we talked about the New Brunswick school and the UPEI school. Let's go over to Nova Scotia now, and let's start off with we talked about it a little bit, and that's 11 new faces with Pete Beliveau and the Dalhousie Tigers.
Yeah, Pete. He said he had a 3-year program or 3-year rebuilding process in mind. This is year 2. He's hoping to fast track a little bit and make the playoffs this year, and he's got some really key players in there. Bobby Nadeau, goaltender for the PEI Rocket last year. He's a star goaltender for sure, and Benoit Gervais is a 62-point guy out of the Quebec Major Junior League. You'll know Jordan Beck isn't eligible for the first half. He's a quality defenseman who you'll recognize right away when you see him because he has all kinds of skills. And Daniel Bartek, a guy from Czech Republic, and Shea Kerwin from the OHL, they're top players as well. So out of the 11 new players, there's about 5 guys who can have an impact there for Dell. And one guy that Pete Beliveau really wanted was Max Tanguay, brother of NHLer Alex Tanguay, but he went to the ECHL. He's a point-a-game guy in the Quebec Junior League, and he would have been a really big asset for that, really big, nice addition for that team.
When you take a look at Dalhousie, they certainly had some great years. Last couple of years been rather lean years. Pete seems to want to stay the course with the rebuilding, and kudos to him for telling people up front, this is what you're going to get over the next couple of years.
Well, the biggest problem with Dal is they have to find a way to win on the road. Last year they won 1 game out of 14. So if they can sneak a few wins on the road and get more wins at home, which they did in the preseason when they beat St. Mary's handily 7-2, they were not rival from Halifax. That's a positive start. But of course they came here came to Farrington, lost 10-4 to the Tommies. So there's a setback. But Pete said he wasn't too worried about that because he had 7 regulars out along with Bobby Nadeau, their top goalie on the bench, or in the stands actually. So we'll see how it all plays out, but Dalhousie will certainly be a lot better than they were last year when they were 20 points out of a playoff spot.
When we go across town, you of course have Trevor Steinberg, who's been there at St. Mary's and a squad that has been a perennial playoff contender. And
Trevor just signed a 5-year contract extension as well, so he'll be there for a long time, and deservedly so. He's had a winning program there at St. Mary's for years, and 20 wins each of the last 2 seasons. And last year was so frustrating for the Huskies because they beat UNB right in their home ice 5-1 in the deciding game of the AUS final, controlled their own fate at Nationals, but blew it and lost 7-2 to Western. And they thought about that all summer, I'm sure, and they're motivated for redemption. The big loss there is Scott Hotham on the power play on the point, an All-Canadian, first-team All-Canadian, and Colin Power and John House are good hard workers, but Scott Hotham is the one that he's a big loss for sure because he was such an integral part of that potent power play that collected around 30% last year.
Sometimes when something like that loss kind of sticks in your craw a little, so St. Mary's and the players will have a little bit extra they'll want to give this year.
That's right, and they're the one team that they gave UNB a battle consistently last year. They lost the first game in the final, win the next 2 to take the series, and Trevor, he's such a good coach. He finds a way to neutralize some of UNB's elite skilled players because he has a good checking lineup as well, and to go with that offensive juggernaut they have in the power play. They've added a couple decent players as well with Corey Tanaka from the OHL and Patrick O'Keefe on defense in the Quebec Major Junior League. So they pretty much have they have 10 of the top 11 players back from last season. So they're a force to be reckoned with again. I just think they're not behind UNB, but they should be a solid second-place team.
And when we go down the road to Antigonish, Brad Peddle has been somebody, he's kind of stuck with things over the last number of years, and of course they've had some good seasons. How do you see the X-Men this coming year?
Well, the X-Men are an interesting team because they have almost all their forwards back, all the scoring's back there. They've added Ryan Sparling, who was a key player for St. John's Sea Dogs, and he'll contribute for sure. But what's interesting is that behind the blue line where they lost Will Colbert, their captain, Sam Roberts, Jeff Caron. They've added 3 guys, though, who are really high-caliber players. Nick Pajot, Spencer McAvoy, and Josh Day. Day and McAvoy were at NHL camps, in fact, and Brad was worried they wouldn't come back. when they came back, that changed everything. And as far as his outlook for his team, and Joey Perricone, he's a elite goaltender. He's replacing Danny Bottaccio, who was a star for so many years at St. FX. And Perricone can play, and so can Brian Gillis, the backup, who stars in the Maritime Junior League and also in the BC Junior League with a tough league out there.
Well, and you also talked about Brad and his days playing in the league. Of course, it's kind of nice to see him have this opportunity to coach in the league as well.
Well, exactly. He sort of was understudy to Danny Flynn, and then Danny went to Moncton. He was an intern basis, and all of a sudden Danny stayed in Moncton with the Wildcats, and he's with the Wildcats now. And Peddle just jumped at the opportunity to take it full time, and again, if he's comfortable with his goaltending, with his defenseman in particular, because he was an all-star defenseman in his day in this league, so he knows what a good defense what takes. There will be a learning curve there because it's a tough league to adjust to with the speed. But they went down to Boston University, tied BU 2-2 because Perricone made 51 saves, and they have Boston College. They lost 4-1, was 2-1 late. So they had some really impressive results against two of the top teams in the United States.
And the final team we'll talk about before we get into your predictions a little bit is the Acadia Axemen and Darren Burns and his squad, a team that sometimes likes to get under other people's skin.
Well, Acadia they should be better than last year. They won 15 games last year. They were 1 point out of fourth, and they ended up sweeping X, so they ended up in the Final Four and gave UMB a couple hard-fought games as well. They lost Blair Jarrett, who's a good hard worker, good money-type player, but that's only a big loss. The rest of the team is back, and they've added Graham Bond on defense, who's a high-caliber player. Spencer Jezigu is the one you'll hear about a lot. He had 70 points for Acadie Bathurst T10. And Andrew Clark was a 40-goal scorer for Brandon in the Western Hockey League. So they pretty much have the same team back and have added three important pieces there, I feel. So they should be maybe move up a notch or two from this season.
When we look at Acadia, I think it comes from the coach himself. They like to get under the opposing team's skin, and they do it quite well.
Well, they do it quite well because they're not blessed with an offensive juggernaut there for sure. They have to really work hard for the goals and play chippy style sometimes, and that's a little bit harder in their own rink because it's Olympic size ice surface, so they have to make sure they have some speed element to the game as well. But when they get in the road, and even you'll see it this season at St. Thomas, they'll get some players chirping at them and so on, and that's the style they have to play because they don't have they have some finesse but not abundance of it.
Now it's time to. People have had a chance to read it, Bruce. Read your preview, but for those who might not have had the opportunity to pick up the Gleaner and read your preview, what teams do you see making in, and what team do you see maybe on the outside looking in at the end of the year? Well,
it's a really a tough year to pick this year. I think it's more like 5 years ago when there was 14 points from top to bottom. I think this year there'll be UMB a fair amount ahead of other teams, but then other teams will all be battling each and every night. I think what will happen is St. Thomas and Dell both missed last year by 9 and 20 points respectively. This year they might miss by 2 and 4, and they might be in by 2 or 4. It's that tight this year. The biggest problem that St. Thomas and Dalhousie both face is that who are they going to pass because the other teams haven't slipped. Moncton was a third-place team last year, and it's been said they've slipped a little bit, but they still have they will slip all the way from third to seventh. That's hard to predict. The biggest thing, I guess, encouraging thing for fans of the Tommies and Tigers is that they're coming. They're making themselves known in the league, and they'll be there to fight. Whereas last year they were there to try to be a spoiler, and it was kind of discouraging for fans. But this year it's the opposite, where they have a legitimate chance to win most nights. And you'll see that. I can see both teams creeping towards double-digit wins without much of a problem. And, of course, we'll be following your columns and your reports on the AUS throughout the year in the Fredericton Daily Gleaner, and that's Bruce Hallihan. Bruce, thanks very much for doing this, and we really appreciate your time. No problem.
That's Bruce Hallihan of the Fredericton Daily Gleaner joining us to talk about the men's hockey preview. You're listening to Summit Dodge Tommy's Hockey and 95.7 The Wolf.